Picture the scene outside SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. June 15th, Iran's opening match against New Zealand. The gates are open, the crowd is moving, and scattered through it, hundreds of men and women wearing green, white, and red, holding phones in the air, refreshing the same screen over and over again. They flew here from Tehran, from Frankfurt, from Toronto. Some of them have been planning this trip for over a year. They have hotel bookings, match-day outfits, flag scarves. What they don't have, and what FIFA has just confirmed they will not be getting, are tickets. Iran's entire official fan ticket allocation for the 2026 World Cup has been cancelled, not reduced, not delayed, cancelled. Thousands of Iranian supporters who applied through FIFA's own authorized process followed every rule and in many cases already paid for their travel are now standing outside a stadium they cannot enter for a match their own country is playing. That happened this week, and the story of how it happened, who is responsible, and what it means for football's relationship with its own supporters, that's what we're going to get into today. By the end of this video, you will know three things. First, exactly what FIFA canceled, when they did it, and what they said to the thousands of supporters who were left with nowhere to go. Second, the specific mechanism inside FIFA's ticketing system that made this possible and why the US government's travel restrictions on Iranian nationals made a bad situation dramatically worse. And third, whether FIFA's response to this crisis is a genuine fix or something that only sounds like one. Let's go. The ticket system FIFA built and then pulled from under Iran's fans. For the 2026 World Cup, FIFA introduced what it called the Supporter Entry ticket tier. The pitch was straightforward. It was designed specifically to give fans from participating nations access to their team's matches at prices lower than the general public market. You applied through your National Football Federation. You submitted your details, and if approved, you received a direct allocation of tickets, a pathway that bypassed the open market entirely. For Iranian supporters, this was not a luxury. It was the only realistic pathway to being there. Iranian nationals face severe restrictions under U.S. immigration policy. Obtaining a U.S. visa is an extended, uncertain process that for many Iranians involves months of waiting and a meaningful probability of rejection. The supporter entry tier was, in theory, the mechanism FIFA and the U.S. government had agreed would allow Iranian fans to attend. There was even a specific FIFA-US agreement around visa prioritization for World Cup ticket holders. Supporters applied. Supporters were approved through the process. Some received confirmation of their allocations. And then, in the days immediately before Iran's June 15th opener against New Zealand at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, the allocation was canceled. Not every fan, not all matches, but the scale of what was withdrawn was large enough that reports of supporters stranded in Los Angeles with no route to a ticket began circulating within hours. Social media footage emerged of Iranian fans, men and women who had made the trip in full faith, standing outside SoFi, holding up their phones as evidence of an approval that was no longer worth anything. FIFA's official statement, released in response to questions from journalists, acknowledged the cancellations. The organization pointed to what it described as complications arising from U.S. government travel and security restrictions on Iranian nationals as a contributing factor. It did not offer a number. It did not name the specific policy that triggered the withdrawal. And it did not, in its initial statement, provide a clear path forward for the affected supporters. That silence, from an organization that had promised this system would work, is where this story starts. What this actually costs, in money, in trust, in years of planning. Let's be specific about what we're talking about, because this story gets abstract very quickly if we let it. A return flight from Tehran to Los Angeles, if you are lucky enough to find a direct route, costs between $1,100 and $2,400 depending on when you booked. Most Iranian fans traveling to the United States for this tournament will have booked months in advance, at a point when they believed their ticket allocation was secured. Non-refundable. Hotel accommodation in Los Angeles for match week, across the nights surrounding June 15th, was running between $280 and $450 per night before the tournament began. Add ground transport, food, incidentals, and the total cost of a trip for a single fan to attend one group stage match in Los Angeles runs comfortably above $2,500. For families, multiply that by 3 or 4. These are not wealthy tourists. Iranian football supporters attending a World Cup, especially one requiring a U.S. visa process, are people who committed months of bureaucratic effort, a significant portion of their household budget, and in many cases family savings, to be there. The trip to the 2026 World Cup was not a casual decision. It was a sacrifice. And it was a sacrifice made on the basis of an official promise, not an unofficial expectation, not optimistic assumption. FIFA's supporter entry tier was a documented, publicized mechanism that FIFA itself promoted as the solution for exactly this situation. There is a specific kind of betrayal that happens when an institution asks you to trust its system. You do trust it, and then the system is taken away without adequate explanation or remedy. What the stranded fans outside SoFi Stadium experienced is that betrayal, delivered in real time, on the day of a match, in a country many of them had never visited before. One image that circulated widely on June 15th showed a group of Iranian supporters sitting on the steps outside SoFi Stadium, not protesting, not shouting, just sitting, some of them still wearing their jerseys. The match was starting inside, they were outside. That photograph says more about what this tournament has become for Iranian fans than any press release FIFA will ever publish. Quick pause here. If this kind of coverage is useful to you, a subscribe means you'll get the follow-up on this story as it develops. We're going to keep tracking what happens to these supporters. But for now, let's get into why this happened. Because the answer is more complicated than FIFA has let on. The visa wall, and why FIFA knew it was coming here, is what FIFA's statement left out, and what the background to this tournament makes clear. The U.S. government's travel restrictions on Iranian nationals are not new. They have been in place, in various forms, since 2017. When the United States was awarded the 2026 World Cup as part of a joint bid with Canada and Mexico in 2018, the question of how Iranian fans, and fans from other nations on the U.S. restricted travel list, would access matches on American soil was a known problem, not a hypothetical. A documented, anticipated obstacle that FIFA and the U.S. government had 8 years to solve. The solution that emerged was the Visa Prioritization Framework, a commitment from the U.S. government to expedite visa processing for World Cup ticket holders from all participating nations, including Iran. FIFA Supporter Entry tickets in this framework were supposed to function as a de facto letter of facilitation. You held a ticket. The ticket gave you standing to apply for expedited processing. What the framework did not solve, and what nobody in FIFA's public communications addressed clearly, was what happened when the U.S. government determined that a specific applicant posed a security concern under its own classification standards, regardless of their ticket status. For Iranian nationals, particularly those with mandatory military service histories, a category that includes the overwhelming majority of Iranian men over the age of 18, U.S. immigration review involves a layer of scrutiny that ticket prioritization does not bypass. FIFA built a ticketing solution for a visa problem it did not have authority to solve. And when U.S. processing began in earnest and rejections came through, not because people had done anything wrong, but because the security classification system that U.S. law requires was working exactly as written, the ticket allocations that depended on those visas being issued became void. What FIFA did then is the part of this story that deserves the most scrutiny. Rather than announcing the cancellations in advance, with maximum notice and a clear remediation plan, the withdrawals were communicated close to match day, in some cases, reportedly, within days of June 15th. Supporters who had made non-refundable travel arrangements on the basis of their allocation received notification through FIFA's ticketing portal. There was no hotline, no dedicated support channel, no emergency fund. Gianni Infantino, who had watched Iran's warm-up match in Turkey, who had personally confirmed Iran's participation at the FIFA Congress in Vancouver in April, who had handled the Iran-US diplomatic tightrope with visible care for months, was, according to FIFA's communications, unavailable for specific comment on the fan ticket situation in the days surrounding June 15th. The players crossed the border. The fans could not. What FIFA offered, and what it actually means, FIFA's formal response to the cancellations came in two parts. First, a commitment to issue full refunds for the canceled ticket allocations. Second, a pledge to work with the Iranian Football Federation to explore alternative access options for affected supporters for Iran's remaining group stage matches, June 21st against Belgium and June 26th against Egypt in Seattle. On refunds, a refund is not a remedy. A refund returns the cost of the ticket. It does not return the $2,500 in flights and accommodation. It does not return the visa application fees. It does not return the days of annual leave spent processing the application, waiting for confirmation, and traveling. For supporters who made it to Los Angeles and then couldn't get in, the refund is the smallest part of what they are owed. On alternative access for future matches, as of June 15th, no specifics had been published. The commitment to explore options is the kind of language organizations use when they do not yet have a plan. For supporters whose June 26th match is in Seattle, a different city requiring additional travel from a base in Mexico or from Los Angeles, the window for any alternative arrangement is narrow. It is closing faster than FIFA's communications suggest they understand. Here is the question worth sitting with. FIFA generated a projected $11 billion in revenue from the 2026 World Cup, not million, billion, and the organization cannot find the operational capacity to proactively manage the visa situation for the supporters of one qualifying nation, a situation it had 8 years to anticipate, and a specific framework that was supposed to handle it. That gap between institutional scale and institutional accountability is the story underneath this story. Inside the stadium, the other side of June 15th. Here is the thing that makes this story impossible to reduce to a simple narrative of failure. While the fans sat on the steps outside SoFi, inside that stadium, Iran played football. They played in front of a crowd that included some Iranian supporters who had managed to secure tickets through other channels, resale, general sale, allocation through other federations. And they played well. Iran's squad, managing a logistical burden with no precedent in World Cup history, crossing an international border from a base in Tijuana before every match, went out and competed. Mehdi Taremi, whose visa complications had been specifically named in Iran's 10-point ultimatum to FIFA months earlier, started the match. He crossed the border. He walked out of a tunnel in Los Angeles. He played in a World Cup. The fans who made it inside were screaming. The fans who didn't make it inside were watching on screens in a fan zone in Tijuana, or in the lobby of a hotel they couldn't leave without a plan, or on their phones in the departures hall of an airport, about to go home early. Both of those things happened on the same day, in the same city, at the same match. And that contrast between what the 2026 World Cup could have been for Iranian football supporters and what it became is not something a refund resolves. It is not something a press release acknowledges. It is something that will be remembered. Here is what I want to know from you. FIFA had 8 years to prepare for this problem. The visa restrictions on Iranian nationals were not a surprise. The supporter entry tier was specifically designed to address it, and yet on June 15th, supporters sat outside SoFi Stadium with cancelled allocations and no alternative. So here is a direct question with a direct choice, and I want your answer in the comments. Is what happened to Iranian fans on June 15th a FIFA failure, an organization that took on a hosting commitment it wasn't equipped to deliver for every participating nation? Or is it a U.S. government failure, immigration law that the host country chose not to adapt for a tournament it bid to host? One is an accountability question about football governance. The other is about whether a nation that wants to host the world's biggest sporting event has obligations to every nation attending it. Both are worth arguing. I read every comment. Let me know which side you're on. If you found this worth your time, a like genuinely helps this video reach people who should be seeing this story. Subscribe if you want to follow this tournament all the way through. We're going to track what happens to the affected supporters for Iran's June 21st and June 26th fixtures. We'll report whatever FIFA announces. And if nothing changes, we'll report that too. From Los Angeles to Tijuana to Seattle, the story of Iran at this World Cup is not over. We'll see you for the next one.